I'm so tired of trying to say things to people and having them not listen.
I used this video excerpt in a reel to discuss the way that the stories of our trauma constantly show up in the language that we use when we complain or when we argue with other people. I really like this video because it's an example of what core language sounds like, which is a term that comes from this practice of language mapping, which is based on this theory that the words that we use when we complain about something or we fight with someone are maps to what our traumas are. And theoretically, not only can we learn a lot about our own traumas, it's a way to learn about the deep wounds of other people that we care about. And it's such a radical practice for me because it allows me to become disarmed and more focused on the hurt that a person is feeling than the attack that I'm perceiving. This video is a part of a larger IG video series on genetic or DNA trauma, based on the work published by the trauma recovery psychologist Mark Wolynn, who heavily references the studies done by the gene biologist Bruce Lipton. I started this research project for a historical fiction TV series that I'm writing about the connection between witchy or magical gifts and generational trauma. But as a neurodivergent person, I'm very fascinated with learning new and better and improved ways of managing my relationships and the ways that my trauma responses influence my patterns. You know, a lot of people in my community and my audience are interested in that as well. And so it just became like the perfect little cosmic situation for me to start talking about the studies that I was researching on my social media as well. So if you're somebody who enjoys learning more about self-awareness and trauma recovery tools, I think you'd really like the series that I have on IG and the articles that are now on Substack and the recap videos that I am now doing on YouTube. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button on YouTube and over on Substack. Even if you can't do, a paid membership on Substack yet, there is a freemium model and you guys get like 50% of all the content. So just go ahead and tap in. Let's dive right in and finish this rewatch of the reel, and then we'll start talking about the comments and questions that got left below so that I can kind of fill in the blanks for you. And if I don't get to your question, please just drop it below. I love fostering a community where we have conversations with each other. Just remember to be kind. As a thank you for watching, subscribing, and commenting, because we're really trying to make it to 5K subs on YouTube, I will pick a couple of people who left comments and who subscribed for free Substack premium membership. The reason this video reminded me of core language is because this is the exact language that I heard recently from someone that I care about. They said something along the lines of, but I guess you don't care about any other perspective other than yours. And then words like never and always followed. And for a moment, I was enraged because never listen, always jump to conclusions. It's like, that's not historically accurate. But because I read about language mapping and core language, I realized that this person was trying to tell me that they have a deep wound around not being heard. And it's not that they actually feel like I never listen to them, but they might feel that habitually the people that they care about don't hear them. Or more specifically, they did not feel heard in their childhood, thus creating a core wound. And so now every time they fight with somebody, core language jumps out because it needs to be resolved. And so instead of engaging in this fight from a defensive position, the minute I caught that, I said, if that's the way my behavior is making you feel, then I agree with you. So I stepped out of whether that was actually happening or not. No, how do you feel? How you feel is reality. And from there, we were able to disarm the fight and resolve the tension. And it's just a reminder to listen when people are fighting with you. It's not about how accurate the claim or accusation is. They're trying to tell you where it hurts. And if the relationship matters, listen. So the number one question that I got is, what is language mapping and how do I find more resources to learn more? My point of entry was through the book by Mark Wolynn, which is called It Didn't Start With You. This is primarily a book about how DNA trauma is transmitted from generation to generation. The ideal being whatever traumas your parents experienced, they live in the body, because we know traumas live in the body, right? Just like your trauma lives in your body. But the ideal is that if trauma is not resolved, it will be passed down generation to generation until it is. It Didn't Start With Us theorizes that a lot of the situations you find yourself in, from the people that you're attracted to the habits that you can't break, if you can't keep a job, just whatever the little friction points in your life that you can't seem to explain, they are typically the product of ancestral memory living in the body. I did a talk at like a women's event, and the example that I used for this was that one of the major traumas that happened to my mother is that she lost her fiance tragically, the man she was engaged to before she met my father. And I grew up knowing that story, but it wasn't really until I started learning about language mapping that I connected that experience to my really weird experience where whenever I'm in a secure relationship, I get like panic out of nowhere that something horrible is going to happen. Not like fear that my partner will leave me or cheat or something like that. It's just like something freakishly horrible will happen. Like there was one night where my partner was like, hey, I'm gonna go to the gas station to get something, right? He's like, I'm just gonna like drive to the store, get something and come back. And it was late, but it wasn't super late. It was like 8 p.m. And the minute he walked out of the door, my heart started palpitating because I was afraid that I would never ever see him again. I was afraid that somebody or something horrible would snatch him out of this world and I would never see him. But through this understanding of genetic trauma, I began to understand that I think I was replaying my mother's memory, ancestral memory or elder memory, passed down through DNA, that if I end up in a safe and secure relationship, something horrible will happen. And interestingly enough, what I ultimately found is that it happened to her twice. So there was the man that I knew about that died 2 or 3 years before she met my dad. And then 10 years before that, in the early 80s, she had a fiance die, which is just like horrible. I can't even imagine, which is kind of the point of this process, because as we are about to move into the thing we're actually talking about, which is like language mapping and hearing the stories of people's trauma play out in the words that they use, the thing to keep in mind is that this is a tool for empathy. So it's not a tool to excuse people who have habitually bad behavior. It's not a tool to project things onto other people. The context in which it's supposed to be used is that you are using this with the person you already know and trust. So it's not for the guy you just met 3 weeks ago and you have no idea what his track record or intention or consistency looks like with you, because you don't have it yet. You're still establishing a foundation. This is a person that you know values you and sees you as a person who's important, because it hinges on this idea that you can hear people's trauma when they complain to you or when they argue with you, right? And so if it's too early, their arguments might just be them revealing negative thoughts they have about you. So the ideal here is this is somebody you know and you trust, like a family member, somebody you share community with, or somebody you have an established relationship with. And the empathy comes in where like, I know this person does not think that I'm a horrible person, but they tell me I'm a horrible person every time I make a little mistake or I do something for the, you know what I mean? Like the first time you let them down or disappoint them, or something really little happens and the response is just, it's disproportionate. And so it's like, it's not the person who abuses you and does that to you all the time, but it's like, it's a very specific instance. It is like, where does this come from? And so it's an empathy tool to be like, if I am listening closely, I hear them telling me the story of their trauma, and I can see that they are replaying that dynamic to be able to fix and resolve it. Because what this process in the book, It Didn't Start With You, really leans into is that whether it's the story of your ancestors' trauma or the story of your trauma, we never shut up about our traumas, even when we're joking, even no matter what we're doing. It ties into that whole like, be careful how you talk about yourself, even when it's a joke, because it's this idea that unconsciously we continuously communicate our needs, our thoughts about ourselves and about the world. I think I just answered like 3 questions in one with that one, but let's keep tracking. That said, let's break it down a little bit. And so core language mapping, it's about finding the core language, which makes up the core complaint. The core complaint is the complaint that keeps coming back. So in the example I used in the reel, he said to me, you never ever see anybody else's perspective. And the biggest reason I was able to extract that as a core complaint, because people were like, it's just hyperbole, people are over, no, like, it's a 60-second reel, like what? The context that you're missing is that I know this person, or I hope you understand that I know this person, because I said person that I care about. And so we have had many experiences together and he's never said anything like that. And I know what our relationship is, which for the most part, we are like a support system to each other. We are both content creators who share space with each other to like allow ourselves to, decompress of what it's like to deal with the public. So our whole relationship is based on listening to each other. Like that's why we hold space to each other. That's our whole relationship is I hear you, validation, support. And so in that very, really sticky moment where I was upset about something he had done or failed to do, And I was just focused on the fact that he had failed to do the thing, which my core complaint jumped out too, because I was like, blah, 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 you did this intentional hurt line, even though I know historically this person has never done anything to historically hurt me. And so if he failed to meet an expectation, it was probably genuinely an accident or a mistake or just something's going on. It's never happened before in like the 7 to 8 months that this person has been an accountability and support system for me. And so when I said that big accusation, they came back like, you never ever hear any other side than yourself, which is, just, it's literally just historically not true, because the whole basis of our relationship is to hear each other's side. And as the tool is meant to function, it triggered my empathy. You feel like the people in your life who you are closest to habitually make you feel unheard. I do think that that is a big theme with men. A lot of men feel unheard. A lot of times there's a reason for that. A lot of times men don't have the tools to communicate that they need connection and to be heard and to be vulnerable, because the world and society at large has not created safe spaces for men to do that. And so a lot of times they internalize things, and sometimes when people aren't good at verbally asking for help or support, the people around them just don't naturally lend it. And it's not because they don't care, it's because everybody's in their own world and there's so much happening. There's so much personal accountability and heavy lifting that people have to do. It's just like people don't always have it in them to extrapolate and sense out the room when you need them, which is it's not the healthiest thing. Like, to be able to sense out somebody's emotions is a trauma response, but that's not what this video is about right now. But all that to say, I think that's a super common thing with men, where they kind of keep swallowing everything down, and in the moment they really need to feel heard, they don't know how to communicate it, but they will react to the fact that they feel unseen and unheard, because they're human beings. And so I was like, oof, okay, got it. And it was not letting him off the hook for the thing I was upset about. It was about acknowledging that if we keep going, this is going to keep escalating, and it's going to get to somewhere that it doesn't need to be, because we're both saying things that are not historically true. It is true in this moment, he disappointed me in X, Y, and Z way. And it is true in this moment that I was not interested in hearing what he had to say about blah, 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 blah. That is true. I was not caring in that moment. But for him to say, you never, always, all of that, I was like, ooh, we are both kind of speaking from the wound here. And so I took a step back and instantly destabilize the tension. How you do that is up to you. I like to use humor, but that won't work for everybody. I just know one of the things that me and this person enjoy about each other is that we're goofballs. And so in that moment, I knew we could laugh. Someone else, if I would have tried to make a joke, they would have felt invalidated. In fact, an exact person came to mind who was also a guy friend. I'm like, he would have blocked me if I would have made a joke in that moment. So however you decide to de-escalate, do that. But also kind of find that limit between, it's not about letting the person off the hook. It's not about pretending like your feelings don't matter. They do. Everybody's feelings matter. But it is about somebody deciding to go first and go, hey, I think the fight that we are creating is not as valuable as the relationship that I would like to preserve. So again, it's a relationship management tool. It's not a daily go-to. It's not like, it should not become the crutch of your relationship. And it really should only be for people you know what their intentions are. Otherwise, if you don't know their intentions, you can't necessarily discern whether this is a deviation from the norm. And so being able to see something as a core complaint or a core trauma is like, this is like out of place for the situation at hand. And if you don't know what they actually think of you, then you don't know that's out of place. You know what I mean? But it can also occur with new people. I feel like this happens all the time in dating, is where like we have some really big trauma that happens in our romantic life, and then we go out into the world and then we just project it onto everybody. We all do it. So it's like we meet someone, they don't text us back fast enough. Now it's like this person is ignoring me, they're a playboy. You don't know that that's what's happening. And so it's like your failure to give this person that you have no stakes in, no what real attachment in, really no like real accountability to. you've just dumped all of this onto them that they just don't value you. Maybe they don't value you because they don't know you, sweetie, right? So it's like, it makes sense to give people the benefit of the doubt when you're getting to know them, because it kind of doesn't matter, right? Like, you're still trying to figure out where you vibe with someone. I think that's the thing that kills me in like the Facebook dating groups that I'm in, because women, God bless them, will say all these things about how do I manage this, and how do I make sure he doesn't like me, like what if he doesn't like this if I say that. Why? You should be 100% saying these things and seeing how he reacts, because it's also your chance to assess him. Everyone gets so focused on the egocentric blah, 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 blah of I want people to like me, that they forget that dating and even becoming friends and even going on job interviews, it's for your evaluation too. So you're so focused on trying to, I'm going to use the M word, manipulate people into liking you, that you are refusing to show up in a way that, one, allows them to decide if they like you, because you're curating yourself, and for you to see if you really like them based on how they respond to you. I'm not hiding anything in the beginning. Like, I'm not gonna not trauma dump, because also people take the opposite of that and they start no, baby, just show up as you are. It's like me being quiet on a date. I'm not quiet. I talk a lot. I have a lot of opinions. There's no reason for me to not show up and be as engaged in a conversation on a first 2, 3, 4 dates when I know that's who I am. Because I need to allow them to see that part of me to determine if they like me. Because if I'm not showing up as myself, then they don't have a chance to like me. And then 2, I have to figure out if they mesh with me. Like, it's like people and I do mean, because women, men, everybody does it. People are so desperate to be liked for the sake of validation, to make up for whatever the childhood trauma is, that they won't even show up genuinely. Like, they just desperately need to manipulate and control the situation. It is a form of manipulation. Manipulation is not the word you think it is. I have naturally 4C coily hair. When I straighten my hair, that's manipulating my hair. Manipulation is anything you do to intentionally alter something's outcome. And when you hide who you are so that somebody will like you and keep engaging with you, that's manipulation. When you don't, and then you're like, why it went so bad? And because you don't talk and you don't show up as who you are. Like, okay, I'm getting way off like map, but like it just makes me crazy. 'Cause, like, there was post where this girl goes like, I reached for the check and he let me pay for it. You shouldn't have reached for it. You shouldn't have reached for it. You shouldn't have reached for it. Like, that was you lying. That was you telling him that you wanted to cover the date. It's not his job to read your head. Maybe you are a person who likes treating like the people you date. I do. It goes both ways. Like you can't keep doing this thing where you hide who you are and what you want and what you expect in a partner, and then being mad when people don't show up. Like, you want people to read your mind. You want people to magically do for you what you hoped your parents did, which again gets us back to core complaints. I don't want this to be super long, and I feel like I've been talking a bit for a second, but if you have more questions about this process, or where to find this book, or where to find articles about it, or whatever you want to contribute, please drop it below. I think people learn just as much from hearing people's feedback, experiences, and thoughts on these things as they do from the original video. So drop your thoughts below, and do be sure to subscribe. But I really do love language mapping, and it is called language mapping because it's like you're making a map to your trauma based on the words that you use, but it's also a way of mapping your body. So another video that is on IG is about how to find emotions in the body, and through finding that through words, you can find where you store trauma in the body. So again, people are like, oh, it's hopeless because you want to believe that, or that's your core complaint, that you feel like, oh, I'm doomed and I'm hopeless. I would, even if I thought that, I wouldn't say that out loud, not publicly. And so the fact that you're so comfortable, like, I must be so doomed because my parents this and that happened. If that's your truth, it's not my job to course correct it, because that's the other thing. People will do that and they expect you to, like, make them feel better. I mean, if that's what you believe, that's what you believe. Do your own work. You're an adult. I'm doing all my own work plus some. It's like not my job to make you believe in something. But if you would like to believe in something, I think this is a good community for you, and that these videos could be helpful. But you do, like, if you're doom and gloom, you are contributing to whatever is happening out in the masses online anyways. The world is not doomed. It's just people only want to talk about doom on the internet. You're contributing to that atmosphere, so it's like, keep that at home. Like, environmental friendliness in the form of emotional recycling. But watch your language. It is teaching you the things that are unresolved and living in your body. And if you can start mapping that to locations in your body, which if you want to do a video about that, I can do that, a longer one anyways, there's one on IG. You can start finding where trauma is stored and how to release it. Like, I carry a lot of trauma in my lower back and in my shoulders, right? And so like, you have to release those things, and that's how you keep them from being passed down and from haunting you and becoming chronic conditions. So there is a Substack article about that, like the studies done at Harvard and Johns Hopkins about these negative things living in the body and becoming like cancer. So check that out. Subscribe here, subscribe on Substack, and I'll see you in the comment sections. Later, guys.